Thank you. Could I ask those members who are leaving the chamber to please do so quickly and quietly, as we will move on to the next item of business shortly? And could I ask our visitors in the gallery who are leaving the chamber to please do so quickly and quietly as well, so that we can move on to the next item of business. Thank you for your cooperation. So, the next item of business is the members' business debate on motion 15883 in the name of Ash Regan on expanding Scotland's connectivity from Edinburgh and beyond. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would invite those members who would wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Ash Regan to open the debate. Around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'm delighted to be able to announce to the Chamber that this is my party's first ever members' debate, and I've chosen to use it to address the future of our great nation's connectivity by air, rail, sea and by road. Because when we enhance our connections within Scotland and outwardly to the world, we secure economic empowerment and the prospect of opportunity for all, and no community left behind. So let me begin with the skies. Edinburgh Airport is one of our key gateways to the world, and it has set its sights on obtaining US pre-clearance status. Now, this is more than just a stamp on a piece of paper. Securing pre-clearance puts Scotland on a par with some of the world's most advanced travel hubs, smoothing international departures while sparing travellers the delays and the uncertainties that can stifle tourism and also business growth. So removing administrative barriers showcases Scotland as an open and outward-looking nation ready to seize global opportunities. However, ambition alone will not suffice, and we need to ensure that access to Edinburgh Airport remains unimpeded. And currently, congestion at certain times can bring parts of our capital city to a standstill, which risks us losing out on the benefits of growth. Because when people cannot reliably get to and from the airport, that's obviously going to be a problem. So we need the second access point via Gogar. I think personally that's essential, not just as transport infrastructure, but also as a statement about our forward-thinking approach to planning. Planning that accommodates the needs of residents that live in that area, businesses and visitors. It makes a solid foundation for the next generation of Scots to build upon. I believe we should also continue investing in the Edinburgh tramline as well. It's not simply a novelty. It has, I think, become, over the last few years, a reliable lifeline for many residents across our city and tourists as well, linking the airport to the heart of our capital city and hopefully beyond that. So extending and upgrading that system, I believe, will make our capital city more accessible, more dynamic. I think it appeals to investors when they're deciding about where to land their next venture. So we can see the Edinburgh tramline, one moment, for what it can be, which is a model for sustainable, integrated city transport. I'll give way.
Graham Simpson.
Thank Ash Regan for taking the intervention. I wonder if Ash Regan could tell us where she would like the tram to be extended to.
Ash Regan.
The member will probably be aware there are a number of future lines proposed. I'm the most keen, as you might understand, for the one that comes into my constituency. It goes to the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. So that's the one that I'd be the most keen on. So if we turn to rail now, we can recognise that Glasgow, one of the world's great cities, shouldn't be left behind either. And it lacks, as we know, direct airport connectivity that most other airports in major cities enjoy. The Glasgow Airport Rail Link, I think, should be more than an aspiration. It's a necessity, understood for over 50 years when the Clyde Metro was first discussed in the 1970s. I think it will spur increased tourism and also economic development. A traveller should be able to disembark a flight and board a train that carries them swiftly and efficiently into the heart of Scotland's largest city. So I think Glasgow, with its growing reputation for hosting major sporting events, shouldn't be hamstrung any longer by this lack of integrated transport systems that I think we would all expect in a modern major city. Equally important is the Edinburgh South Suburban Rail Line. I believe this project could elevate the quality of life for thousands of residents, expand the city's livable footprint and promote balanced development that does not rely purely on car-based commuting. I'll give way.
Pam Duncan-Clancy.
I thank the member for taking an intervention on that point, and I just wanted to say that I agree wholeheartedly with her comments about the connectivity of Glasgow Airport, and I wonder if she agrees with me that we need to see much more fast pace on the Glasgow Metro, going as far out as the Glasgow Airport, taking in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, so that we get that connectivity across the city.
Ash Regan.
I think the member has made a good point there. Meanwhile, West Fife Rail has the potential to revitalise local communities and amplify that region's economic prospects while creating a backup line, if you like, between Dunfermline and Glasgow. Now, we also live in a world increasingly driven by digital convenience, and it's crucial that we integrate our rail networks with modern technologies like Apple or Google Wallets. And this isn't a minor detail. It's a strategy that allows for a seamless, modern experience to attract new generations of public transport commuters. If we want residents and visitors alike to choose our public transport, we must meet them increasingly where they live, and that is, as we know, on their smartphones, and we must make every journey as frictionless as possible. Scotland's ports also hold immense untapped potential, serving natural gateways to maintain maritime trade and tourism. So Leith, Gourock, Rosyth, Glasgow, Dundee and Aberdeen. And cruise passengers, I believe, could be a valuable resource for local economies if it's well managed. So enhancing port infrastructure could catalyse new business opportunities, could create job growth in urban centres and remote coastal areas. By reimagining and revitalising these sites, we would again signal to the world that Scotland is open for business, whether that's by cargo ship or by cruise liner. And I believe we also must urgently address our roads network, particularly, I think, in the Highlands and also in the south of Scotland. Too often, safety concerns and limited capacity on routes like the A9, the A96, they're hindering that flow of goods and people. It's creating a barrier between our rural communities and the advantages of wider economic participation. And upgrading these critical corridors is not only a matter of economic convenience, it's also about fairness, it's about equity and dignity of living in any part of Scotland without feeling that you're disconnected or that you're being overlooked. And then there is the Forth Road Bridge, a structure, I think, which has immense potential. Currently, it's only in a supporting role alongside its newest neighbour, but I think we need a fresh vision for this iconic structure, whether as a dedicated electric vehicle and commercial route, a venue for innovation, a catalyst for modern tourism. By transforming what might be deemed surplus into a valuable asset, we're demonstrating the kind of innovative thinking that keeps Scotland at the forefront of progress. So, Presiding Officer, my call to Parliament is clear. We need to think bigger by investing strategically, sustainably and inclusively in our infrastructure. Let's realise every airport upgrade, every port improvement, every rail link, every road expansion is a promise to our people, a promise that we believe in them, that we believe in Scotland as a competitive force on the global stage. And my debate today is not just about improving travel times or building better transport stations. It's a debate about the kind of country we want Scotland to be: open, confident, prepared to lead in the 21st century. So let's champion this connectivity as a national priority, uniting our urban and also our rural communities and forging new global links that allow our people to flourish. And in doing so, we honour our responsibility to foster growth, open doors of opportunity and showcase to the world the very best that Scotland has to offer. So let's send that clear message to the people of Scotland and the world, summed up well, I believe, by paraphrasing the inspiring words of the MSP who reconvened this very Parliament. Stop the world. Scotland is getting on.
Thank you, Ms Regan. And we will now move to the open debate. And I call Fergus Ewing to be followed by Graeme Simpson. Mr Ewing.
Presiding Officer, I warmly congratulate Ash Regan on bringing this topic to the Chamber, and improving connectivity, of course, is very largely reliant on delivery of strategic transport projects. There has, in my view, sadly, over the past 4 years, been no other single area of devolved policy, where so much has gone wrong at such exorbitant cost, so frequently, as the maladministration of our major transport projects. And I say that with great sadness, and it does contrast with the record of previous administrations of different hues. We've seen the motorway network around the west of Scotland being about as good as anywhere. The Forth Crossing is a national icon of international standard. The Aberdeen Peripheral Road and the Borders Railway have improved lives immeasurably for those communities. And Edinburgh, well, as we heard, they did decide to choose the trams. The last 4 years have seen major projects flounder and fail. The A9 dualling was promised to be completed this year, but now we're told 10 more years is required. That's just not acceptable, as the delegation made clear to the First Minister and the Cabinet Secretary last June, when we asked for it to be accelerated. Or the equally long-promised dualling of the A96. Now, 90 million quid has been spent on this project so far, and not 1 metre of tarmac has been laid. Information about the detail of this has been denied under FOI because of the exemption regarding internal candidate discussion, and the justification for that, and I quote, is to maintain the high quality of policy and decision-making, end quote. If that's high quality, what does poor quality look like? Now, I want to be positive. I've always tried to offer constructive criticism, even although it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. But we need to have a fresh approach to strategic project delivery, a tabula rasa, as they may say, entirely fresh approach. And briefly, let me say 4 components, and I can only talk about them at a very high level. Firstly, take the partisan party politics out of it. There's a consensus between the main parties. Let's negotiate, work with the main parties, not pander to our absent wine bar revolutionaries. Second, put local community people who know their communities best in charge and involved of decision-making at all times, not just part of some synthetic and bogus consultations, especially in the Hebrides, and CMAL and CalMac in particular. And I recognise the work that Brian Wilson has done that at very salient points he's made. Third, far more reliance on industry and civil engineering experts, more collaboration. Let them, independently of Transport Scotland, advise, probe, quiz, challenge, question projects at every time, not as paid consultants in the pocket of quangos, but as independent experts who know far more than politicians about what they're doing. And fourthly, real candour and accountability, an end to the FOI secrecy regime. Because, Cabinet Secretary, sadly, whether it's CMAL and ferries or Transport Scotland on roads, these quangos, quasi-autonomous, have become almost fully autonomous. The quasi has gone. The accountability is not there. Everybody can see it, and it really must change, and change radically. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, I'm afraid to say that for my constituents, the last 4 years have been the wasted years. But the Cabinet Secretary, who I know has the best of intentions, has 1 year left before the next election to put it right. I urge her to do so.
Thank you, Mr Ewing. I now call Graham Simpson to be followed by Daniel Johnson. Mr Simpson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Can I congratulate Ash Regan for securing enough support to have this debate? I think I might be wrong about this, but I may have been the first member to support the motion. And it's certainly one of the most comprehensive that I've seen in some time. Ms Regan covers a lot of bases. I won't cover all of those. I'm going to concentrate my remarks on aviation and the Clyde Metro, which will impact on the region where I live and represent. The Cross-Party Group on Aviation's February 2023 report argued for a policy regime supportive of aviation, stronger engagement around route development and airline support. The inbound and outbound aviation and tourism sectors are crucial enablers for the Scottish economy. Outbound travel is worth more than £3.6 billion a year to the Scottish economy and supports the employment of more than 30,000 people across Scotland. Research conducted by Edinburgh Napier University found that air links are the most influential transport factor in the location decisions of most overseas-based businesses investing in the UK. So aviation matters to the economy, local and national, and it matters to us all in terms of Scotland being connected to the world. Now, the motion mentions the ambition of Edinburgh Airport to have a US pre-clearance facility, as Dublin has. This means that we're going to have to work closely with the US government and President Trump to persuade them that they should fund such a base here in Scotland, because the boost to the economy would be fantastic, and clearly Edinburgh Airport would benefit hugely. Now, having flown to America through Dublin, I can tell the Chamber that it's massively more convenient to clear customs on this side of the Atlantic than the other. So I do wish Edinburgh Airport well, but I also want to see Glasgow Airport thrive, and there's no doubt that it would do even better if the transport links to and from the airport were improved. Talk of a light rail link to the airport has gone on for too long. I can think of no other major airport anywhere that does not have better connections, and fixing that must be a priority. It now appears that this may be addressed through the ambitious, but I have to say as yet quite woolly, Clyde Metro project. The programme-level business case for this network is expected by 2026, and it's estimated that timescales for the project could be as long as 25 years. That is way too long. Having an integrated transport system in the Strathclyde region is too important to be kicked this far down the road. So we need governments to commit to this. It's too big for local government to fund, and we need to get moving, because we know that a region with strong connectivity will enjoy increased levels of trade. The development of Glasgow Airport represents a unique opportunity to drive economic growth and prosperity in that region. Now, if I can just finish by saying that aviation does need to decarbonise. Scotland should be at the forefront of making the new fuels of the future, but we aren't at the races yet. There was an event here in Parliament last night looking at sustainable aviation fuel, and we really ought to be making sustainable aviation fuel here in Scotland. I've spoken about this many times before. The Cabinet Secretary knows that. So we need to be doing better. Transport can be the engine of growth, but too often it's the opposite. So can I thank Ash Regan once again for allowing the Chamber to discuss these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Simpson. I now call Daniel Johnson to be followed by Douglas Lumsden. Mr Johnson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. And can I too thank Ash Regan for bringing forward this motion. It's incredibly important. I was very pleased to be one of the signatories of it, because I think it actually is making points that need to be made in this place and made more often. And not only was I happy for her to bring this forward, I didn't disagree with a single word she said in her speech. Nor with any of the contributions thus far. I think the reason I say that so forcefully is I think it makes the really important point, which is this, is that transport isn't detached from the rest of public policy, it's central to it. And this is a point I was making at a reception I hosted on behalf of the Road Haulage Association, which is actually transport is the economy. It's the fundamental connective tissue. And that's true of any economy, but it's particularly true of Scotland, because so much of what makes our economy distinctive is actually about what we make and produce in remote places. Whether that's the energy industry in the North East, the whisky industry, where we have distilleries in highlands and islands, aquaculture, All too often, what is distinctive, what gives us a competitive edge in the Scottish economy is about having productive capacity in places like that, but very often how that then links with places in the Central Belt. So let's take whisky, for example, distilled in remote parts of Scotland, but very often bottled in places in the Central Belt. We export 43 bottles of whisky a second, 1.5 billion bottles produced every year. So when we talk about the A9 and why that is so important and why Fergus Ewing is so right to get across, that's not just an inconvenience. When you have a lane closure on the A9, you are literally creating the mother of all bottlenecks. That flow of whisky, which is so important to our economy, gets interrupted. And likewise, it's not just that industry, it's all industries need transport links, because I fundamentally believe that the economy is about moving things from point A to point B, whether that's goods, getting supplies in from your suppliers to your place of business, or your finished products to your customers. You need transport. If you want your workers to get from where they live to where they need to work, you need transport. Transport is the absolute lifeblood and foundation of the economy. And I think we need to start talking about it as such. It is not a peripheral topic. It is not another policy area. It is the foundation of the economy. And that's especially true in Scotland, where we have so many remote areas of production. So I think the comment that Ash Regan made that I support most is that point, that it is about that link between urban and rural. And we must end the discussion about whether we're talking about urban or the rural economy, actually about the urban and the rural economy, because our economic advantages rely on urban and rural working together, and it's transport that gets in the way of that. I would also say, and I recognise I don't have very much time, we need a renewed conversation about roads. Again, we far too often talk about in binary terms, either roads are good or roads are bad. No. Roads are vitally important to providing those transport links, providing those links between urban and rural. And that's both having the major transport projects being delivered. I think Fergus Ewing is absolutely right to highlight those issues. But it's also about getting the basics right. I was talking to a haulier the other night who was saying that he is spending £30,000 a month on tyres because they wear more quickly on the outside because our roads aren't wide enough. There is a direct cost because we're not cutting back vegetation at the sides of our roads, that we don't have secure enough resting places for drivers. So let's have a renewed debate about transport. Let's stop talking about binary terms about roads, but let's also get the basics right, as well as delivering strategic projects. Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. And I call Douglas Lumsden. Mr Lumsden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I also congratulate Ash Regan for securing today's debate, and also commend her on the wording of the motion today, not just in providing something for everyone, whether that be in terms of location, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen, or type of connectivity, road, rail and air, but also in highlighting just how important connectivity is to our economy and communities. And this infrastructure is so important, just like energy infrastructure, and that's why it's disappointing that the government don't bring these topics forward in government time for debate. Presiding Officer, I could understand that the government didn't want to talk about subjects like air travel and roads when they were shackled to the Greens, but the anti-growth, anti-aircraft, anti-car extremists have been ditched from government, so this should be top of the agenda once again. Because I feel these infrastructure connections are the veins of our economy, spreading life and jobs across all corners of Scotland, allowing all areas to grow and prosper. And I actually feel that this was known by the devolved SNP government of the past, but this has changed completely, and I'm not sure why. And this was pointed out by Fergus Ewing, because it was something that the government did used to manage to do, but in the last 4 years it has changed completely. Presiding Officer, as my pages have stuck. Take Aberdeen, for example. We have seen a huge £300 million private investment into Aberdeen South Harbour, a brilliant deep water facility, but the planned infrastructure improvements to the city have not kept pace to maximise the economic potential. £200 million was promised by the SNP to be spent on rail improvements to reduce journey times between the city and the Central Belt by 2026, a project that was backed by the Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce to boost economic growth. But the SNP have abandoned that pledge and have spent just 8% of this funding. We have improved port facilities at Fraserburgh and Peterhead. It was an SNP promise to dual roads from Aberdeen to these places, but that has also been dropped. And for places like Fraserburgh and Peterhead, they have no rail links, so they deserve decent road infrastructure. There should be a free port in Cromarty Firth to support the renewable sector, and much of the supply chain and skills will be in Aberdeen. The A96 was meant to be dualled by 2030, another broken promise by this SNP government. And this would help us maximise the economic potential of the Freeport. The A9, as was already mentioned, was meant to be dualled by this year. It will now be at least 10 years late. Another broken promise and more economic benefit lost. People in the North East have had enough of the broken promises and spin from the SNP, and they want to see commitments that they made to be delivered. And we're in budget season, but improvements to road, rail and air hardly get a mention. But this connectivity is so important to economic growth that will create jobs and deliver increased revenue for us all to spend on public services. And Ash Regan is also right to highlight the lack of integrated travel systems. It's an embarrassment in Scotland that we have Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen airports not connected to the rail network, which is even more frustrating when you actually consider how close the rail lines are to those airports. And one final point on airports. The Scottish Government some years ago were looking at devolving air passenger duty, but seemed to bottle it when the Greens started pulling the strings. Surely the devolution of APD is a great opportunity to make Scottish airports more competitive and is a lever we can use to boost economic growth. I conclude by thanking Ash Regan for securing this debate on a topic that is so vital to the future prosperity of Scotland, and would urge the Government once again to allocate government time to this and also energy infrastructure so we can debate the topic fully. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Lumsden. I now call on Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop to respond to the debate. Around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Firstly, I'd also like to thank Ash Regan for securing this debate. It is very wide-ranging in content, so I hope MSPs will appreciate I can't address all the points raised. For the record, I am recused as a Government Minister for matters relating to airspace expansion plans for Edinburgh Airport. As Cabinet Secretary for Transport, I understand the crucial and the evolving role that it has in supporting the economy. The transport sector itself is estimated to support over £9 billion in terms of Scotland's gross value added and around 150,000 jobs, which is about 7% of both for the Scottish economy as a whole. Transport literally drives the economy. And I might comment, Presiding Officer, that more positive things have been said about transport in this chamber in this very short debate by Mr Simpson, Mr Johnson and Ash Regan than I normally hear in this chamber, and I would encourage them and to continue to support me in championing the positive role that transport can play. There will always be challenges, there will always be frustrations, but I think there is space in this chamber to champion transport more widely and its role in the economy. I think Pam Duncan-Clancy wants to come in.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for taking that intervention, and I welcome the way in which she's approaching this debate. She'll be aware that Stuart Patrick, Chief Executive of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, has said that despite the airport-neutral approach, every single route in the aviation strategy, of course, has gone to Edinburgh Airport. So I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary can see in the context of trying to achieve regional economic balance, that approach might need to change. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary whether she'd commit to do something about that today?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think it's really important that we support our airports in our country as a whole. There are commercial issues that mean that we have to and should take an airport-neutral position, but we continue to actively support Glasgow Airport and its work, and I hope there may be some positive developments that they can be announced at some point in the future. I have listened carefully to members' views. I've noted their valuable contributions. Touching on Edinburgh Airport, like our other major airports in Glasgow, Aberdeen, Inverness and Prestwick provide vital connectivity to many destinations, helping to deliver significant economic and social benefits. We are committed to working with Scotland's airports and airlines to help grow Scotland's international connectivity, in particular developing connectivity to key international markets. Can I develop my points slightly? Important to tourism, business connectivity and the economy as a whole. I want to address some of the points that Ash Regan has raised because she's leading this debate. We are also happy to provide non-financial support to our airports when they take initiatives that could bring clear benefits to local economies or even Scotland as a whole. Ash Regan provides a good example of Edinburgh Airport seeking to provide clearance for passengers travelling to the US, which we continue to support and have done for some time. That said, pre-clearance is a commercial matter for Edinburgh Airport and would ultimately need to be approved by the relevant authorities in the United States. And I and the External Affairs Secretary have already discussed the importance of this issue with the incoming US Consul General. Mr Lumsden, do you want to come in?
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for taking the intervention. I mentioned in my contribution air passenger duty, and that could be a way of trying to boost economic numbers and growth and make our airports more attractive. Is that still something that the Scottish Government are considering, devolving air passenger duty?
Cabinet Secretary. So part of the agreement is to devolve APD. The issue is how we do it in a way that does not compromise, in particular, the issues around Inverness Airport. So I can reassure the member it's obviously been dealt with by the Finance Secretary as a taxation issue. I take a keen interest in it, but it is something that's live and current in terms of our considerations of how we use what has already been a devolved matter. Ministers are committed to reducing aviation emissions, of course, as well as increasing our connectivity. And the reserve nature of aviation means we'll continue to influence the UK Government so that Scotland can benefit fully from their Jet Zero strategy for aviation decarbonisation, which applies, of course, throughout the UK. We have also, for example, provided funding to enable Glasgow Airport to explore the feasibility of hydrogen production, storage and distribution hub that would help to support zero-emission transport at that airport. MSPs who attended the Airport Industry Rise reception, hosted by Jackie Dunbar MSP, yesterday evening, heard more about the role of sustainable aviation fuel has in reducing aviation emissions from the industry itself, and indeed they would have heard my positive comments about the role of airports in our economy. In terms of access to Edinburgh Airport raised in the motion, the Scottish Government is aware of the plans for a second road access, which is included in the recently adopted Edinburgh City Plan 2030, noting, of course, that any new road is subject to the statutory approvals process. Edinburgh Airport, of course, needs to improve sustainable access, with passengers and staff making use of the existing public transport options to make their journeys to and from the airport as far as possible. On Glasgow, we have ambitious future plans for Scotland's transport network set out in the second Strategic Transport Projects Review. That the review's recommendations represent a repositioning of our transport investment priorities. The focus is firmly on how transport can help us protect our climate and improve lives while supporting the economy. And the most transformative of the review's recommendations, as we've heard, is for the Clyde Metro, which represents a multi-billion-pound investment, which, when complete, could better connect over 1.5 million people to employment, education and health services across the Glasgow City region, including integrated public transport connectivity to Glasgow Airport. The development of the case for investment is being led by Strathclyde Partnership for Transport, supported by Glasgow City Council and Transport Scotland. The ongoing work includes the development of the network and consideration of funding options for the project's delivery, and I do hear what members have said in this debate so far. We recognise on ports that a diverse and successful port sector contributes significantly to the national, regional and local economies in which they operate. They are vital in delivering the outcomes of the NPF4 and for achieving the success of national development sites identified within it. Ports and harbours are crucial gateways to Scotland, and Scottish ministers continue to support a market-driven approach to ports policy and recognise the contributions of port operators to the economy of Scotland. Furthermore, this is an area of policy I have taken a keen interest in supporting and promoting since taking on the transport portfolio. An example of the importance importance of our ports to Scotland's economy includes the recent granting of pilotage powers to the owners of Port of Ardisea. The harbour order, consented just last month, is an important step in a process that will put Ardisea at the front of our offshore renewable sector. These powers will support significant investment totalling £400 million in a remote and economically challenged part of the country. Fergus.
On ports and the thorny issue of the appointments to CalMac and CMAL boards, the Cabinet Secretary reappointed a Danish gentleman as the head of CalMac and 2 other executive directors, neither of whom are believed to have actually visited any CalMac ports, and the Danish gentleman having understood to visit Stornoway once and then presumably decided it wasn't worth going back to. Why is it that local worthy candidates were rejected, island residents, distinguished, knowledgeable people about the islands? Why is the SNP government replacing the old absentee lairds with absentee Quango bosses?
So, Fergus Ewing quoted Brian Wilson. I think Brian Wilson was very selective in his reporting of the access of both CMAL and CalMac board members and their involvement in sites and how they engage with communities. I agree that we need to have representatives of islands that actually have expertise in the areas that are required, and both CMAL and CalMac have people from island communities on their boards currently, and I have been active as Cabinet Secretary and in encouraging and advertising those issues very widely. As a former Government Minister himself, he will know there are particular skills, particularly around audit and risk, that require some experience, and that has been the case latterly in some of those appointments. So if I can move on, Presiding Officer, I'm very conscious I've taken quite a few interventions. It is a big and wide debate, so if I can continue. Obviously, our offshore capabilities will have more demands on our ports and harbours. On road connectivity, we know how important the A9 is. I've set out and indeed engaged with members in both providing the Net Zero Energy Transport Committee with updates and briefing MSPs themselves, as I did in December last week, those with continued interest. Of course, we have invested and delivered on Queensferry Crossing, M73, M74, A90, the Aberdeen Western Peripheral Road, hugely important, and also on a whole variety of different rail investments, Leavenmouth, Bathgate Airdrie, Barhead, East Kilbride. In terms of the investments, they are considerable right across all the infrastructure in challenging times, in fiscal situations where we've had £6 billion taken out with our budget. We can't ignore the challenges that we have faced. So in conclusion, Presiding Officer, should the Parliament pass the budget bill, we will see a record-breaking transport budget next year, and it would be breaking the £4 billion level. However, we do face increasing pressures from across all our transport systems to ensure that they remain safe and secure, with the most substantial allocation, as members are well aware, going to rail. So, of course, there's more that we'd like to do if we had both full resources and full powers. But I do think that this has been a constructive debate. I can assure members we are committed to investing in our transport networks, connecting our communities, so vital for our future economic growth. And if this debate has done one thing, I hope it has opened a chink where not only can we have absolutely robust scrutiny and accountability of myself as Cabinet Secretary, but please let us have the space that we can all elevate transport to the central role it has in Scotland's economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting until 2:30 p.m. Thank you.